Chapter 1. The Old Man and the Market. It was a bright morning in the small town of Greenhill. The market was busy as usual, with people selling fruits, bread, and clothes. Among the crowd was a young man named Daniel. He was known in the town as an honest, hard-working carpenter, though his life was not easy. He often struggled to pay rent, and sometimes went to sleep with only bread and water for dinner. That morning, Daniel noticed an old man sitting alone in front of the bakery. The man's clothes were torn, and his hands trembled as he held a small wooden bowl. Many people walked past him, pretending not to see. Others looked, but quickly turned their eyes away. Daniel paused. He only had a few coins in his pocket, enough to buy bread for himself, but something in his heart told him to help. He walked into the bakery and used all his coins to buy a warm loaf of bread. He walked back to the old man and said gently, "Sir, here, please eat this." The old man looked up. His eyes were tired but kind. Slowly he smiled, showing gratitude without many words. He took the bread with both hands, as if it were a treasure. "Thank you," the old man whispered. Daniel smiled back. He felt lighter, though now he had no money left for himself. That night Daniel went to bed hungry, but he did not feel regret. He believed that helping others was more important than filling his own stomach. What Daniel did not know was that this small act of kindness would change his future in ways he could never imagine. The next morning, Daniel woke up early and went to his workshop. He started working on a chair that a neighbor had asked for. As he was carving the wood, there was a knock at his door. It was the same old man from the market. The man stood straighter now, looking healthier than yesterday. His clothes were still old, but his eyes shone brightly. "You are Daniel, the carpenter, yes?" the old man asked. "Yes, sir," Daniel replied, surprised. "I have something for you." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small pouch. Inside were seeds, shiny golden seeds that seemed to glow under the morning sun. "These are special seeds," the man said softly. "Plant them, care for them, and they will reward you in ways you cannot imagine." Before Daniel could ask more, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the street. Daniel held the seeds in his hand. He wondered if the man was simply a poor beggar, or perhaps something more. He decided to trust the old man's words. That evening, Daniel planted the seeds carefully in the soil behind his workshop. He watered them and whispered, "Let's see what you can do." And so the journey of Daniel's kindness began. Not with a rich reward, not with sudden fortune, but with a handful of mysterious seeds. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Garden. The days passed quickly, and Daniel continued his work as a carpenter. He built tables, chairs, and small cupboards for the townspeople. Still, he often thought about the old man and the golden seeds. Every morning and evening he went to the small patch of soil behind his workshop to check on them. He watered them carefully and made sure no animals disturbed the ground. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Daniel felt a little disappointed, but he remembered the old man's eyes and his quiet, certain voice. So he waited patiently. One morning, about 2 weeks later, Daniel stepped outside and gasped. Tiny green sprouts were pushing through the soil. They were brighter than normal plants, glowing softly when touched by sunlight. He knelt down, his hands trembling with excitement. "They're alive," he whispered. Day by day, the sprouts grew taller and stronger. Within a month, Daniel's little garden looked different from any garden in Greenhill. The plants had thick stems, wide leaves, and blossoms that shone like stars. Neighbors began to notice. "Daniel, what are you growing?" asked Mrs. Carter, a kind woman who lived next door. I'm not sure," Daniel admitted honestly. "A man gave me these seeds and told me to care for them." "They look magical," Mrs. Carter said, shaking her head in wonder. The plants soon bore fruit. They were not ordinary apples or oranges. These fruits were golden on the outside and smelled sweet even from far away. When Daniel touched one, he felt warmth in his fingers, as if the fruit was alive. He hesitated at first, but finally, one evening, he decided to taste a small piece. The moment the fruit touched his tongue, he felt energy flow through his body. His tired muscles relaxed, his mind grew sharper, and his heart filled with calm joy. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The next morning, Daniel noticed something else. His workshop was busier than usual. People came from all parts of the town, asking for his carpentry work. Some said they had dreamed of him the night before. Others claimed they had suddenly remembered that Daniel was the best carpenter in Greenhill. Daniel realized that the fruit might have special powers. He decided not to sell them or boast about them. Instead, he quietly shared them with those who were sick or tired. He gave one to Mrs. Carter when she complained of her aching back. She returned the next day smiling, saying the pain was gone. He gave another to a poor farmer whose son had been weak from illness. Within days, the boy regained his strength. Word spread slowly, but not too widely, because Daniel always asked people not to talk too much. He was afraid someone greedy might hear about the fruits and try to take them. Still, Daniel's life began to change. People respected him more, not only for his carpentry, but also for his kindness. He never asked for money when he shared the fruit. He believed the garden was a gift, and gifts should not be sold. One night, as Daniel was watering the plants under the moonlight, he heard a voice behind him. "You have done well, Daniel." He turned quickly, but no one was there. Only the soft glow of the plants surrounded him. He shivered slightly, realizing that perhaps the seeds carried not only magic, but also a destiny. And so the mysterious garden continued to grow, silently shaping Daniel's future, preparing him for trials yet to come. Chapter 3. The Test of Greed. Daniel's mysterious garden grew stronger each day, and so did his reputation. People whispered about his kindness and the strange fruits that seemed to heal and give energy. Most townsfolk respected him deeply, but not everyone felt the same. In the heart of Greenhill lived a wealthy merchant named Mr. Harris. He was known for his greed. While he already had gold, silver, and the finest clothes, he always wanted more. One afternoon, he overheard two women at the market talking about Daniel. "They say he has fruits that can cure illness," one woman said. "Yes, my cousin ate one and felt young again," the other whispered. Mr. Harris's eyes narrowed. He had been feeling weak lately, but more than that, he dreamed of selling such fruits for a fortune. If he controlled Daniel's garden, he could become the richest man in the kingdom. That evening, Mr. Harris went to Daniel's workshop. He wore a fine coat and shiny boots, and his face carried a false smile. "Good evening, Daniel," he said smoothly. "I hear you have something very valuable." Daniel looked at him carefully. "If you mean the fruits from my garden, they are not for sale, Mr. Harris. They are meant to help people, not to make money." Mr. Harris chuckled. "Oh, my boy, you are too simple. Think of it. If we sell them, we could build a palace, own horses, ships, anything we desire. I will pay you handsomely. Just give me a few seeds, and I'll handle the rest." Daniel shook his head firmly. "I cannot. These seeds were a gift, and gifts should not be sold. They are meant to heal, not to feed greed." Mr. Harris's smile vanished. His eyes turned cold. "You'll regret this, boy," he muttered before storming away. That night, while Daniel slept, Mr. Harris crept into the garden with a bag. He pulled at the plants, trying to take them by force. But something strange happened. The moment he touched the golden fruit, the light from the garden grew brighter and brighter, blinding him. The plants shook violently, and Mr. Harris cried out in fear. The earth beneath him opened slightly, and he stumbled back, dropping the fruit. The next morning, Daniel found the garden unharmed. But in the market, people whispered again, this time about Mr. Harris. They said his hair had turned white overnight, and his hands trembled so badly he could not count his money. His greed had punished him. When Daniel heard the rumors, he felt pity instead of anger. Though Mr. Harris had tried to steal from him, Daniel decided to visit. He brought a small piece of golden fruit to Mr. Harris's mansion. "I brought this for you," Daniel said gently, "not because you deserve it, but because kindness is stronger than greed." Mr. Harris looked ashamed. His eyes filled with tears as he took the fruit. He ate it slowly, and though it did not restore all his strength, it calmed his heart. From that day on, the merchant changed. He no longer chased wealth as before. He started donating money to the poor, learning from Daniel's example. The town began to see a deeper truth. The garden did not only heal the body, it also revealed the hearts of men, rewarding the kind, humbling the greedy. And Daniel, though still poor in gold, became richer in respect and love than anyone in Greenhill. Chapter 4. The Stranger in the Rain. Autumn came to Greenhill, and the days grew colder. The leaves turned golden and red, falling gently on the quiet streets. Daniel's garden still shone brightly behind his workshop, though the fruits ripened more slowly now. One evening, as dark clouds gathered over the town, a heavy rainstorm began. Daniel hurried to close his workshop windows when he heard faint knocking at the door. Opening it, he saw a stranger standing in the rain. The man was tall, with a hood covering his face, and his clothes were soaked through. His shoes were muddy, and he leaned on a wooden stick as though he were very tired. "Please," the stranger said weakly, "may I have shelter for the night?" Daniel hesitated. He had little space in his workshop and no fine bed to offer. But he remembered how the old man had once sat alone in the market, ignored by many. He could not turn this stranger away. "Come in," Daniel said kindly. He gave the man a dry blanket and set a small fire burning in the hearth. He even cut a piece of golden fruit and placed it on the table. "Eat this," Daniel said. "It will warm your body." The stranger took the fruit slowly. The moment he tasted it, his eyes widened, and a strange glow passed across his face. But then he lowered his head and whispered, "Thank you." That night Daniel let the man sleep on his own bed, while he himself rested on a chair. Outside the storm roared, but inside there was warmth. The next morning Daniel awoke to find the stranger gone. The blanket was folded neatly, and on the table lay a small pouch of silver coins, more money than Daniel usually earned in a month. Daniel was surprised. He never expected payment. He tucked the coins away, but chose not to spend them immediately. He still wanted to live simply, using the garden's blessings only to help others. Weeks passed, and the memory of the stranger faded, until one day a group of soldiers rode into Greenhill. They carried banners of the royal family, and the townspeople gathered nervously. At the front rode a man in shining armor. His face was familiar. Daniel realized it was the same man he had sheltered during the storm, but now he wore a crown upon his head. The townsfolk gasped. It was Prince Adrian, heir to the throne. The prince dismounted and walked directly to Daniel's workshop. "Do you remember me?" he asked with a smile. Daniel bowed awkwardly. "Yes, Your Highness, you came during the storm." The prince nodded. "Indeed. I traveled in secret to learn how my people live. Many turned me away that night, but you, a humble carpenter, welcomed me with nothing but kindness. You gave me shelter and food without asking who I was or what I could give in return. That tells me more about your heart than any riches could." Daniel was speechless. The townspeople whispered in awe, staring at him with new respect. Prince Adrian continued, "Because of your kindness, I owe you a debt. Ask me for anything, and I shall grant it." Daniel thought for a long moment, then answered simply, "All I ask, Your Highness, is that you rule with justice and kindness. That will be enough reward for me." The prince smiled widely, and then he promised, for as long as I live to remember those words." And with that, the seeds of kindness Daniel had planted reached even the royal palace, though he asked nothing for himself. Chapter 5. The Fire in Greenhill. Winter arrived, and Greenhill was covered in snow. Smoke rose from chimneys, and families stayed close to their hearths. Daniel's garden, protected by its strange magic, still flourished even in the cold. The golden fruits continued to grow, glowing warmly like little suns in the snow. Daniel's life seemed peaceful, but destiny soon tested him again. One freezing night, while Daniel was finishing a wooden cradle for a neighbor's newborn baby, shouts echoed through the streets. "Fire! Fire!" people cried. Daniel rushed outside and saw thick smoke rising from the far end of the town. The bakery was burning. The flames spread quickly to nearby houses, carried by the wind. Families screamed, trying to save their children and belongings. Without thinking, Daniel ran toward the fire. He saw Mrs. Carter, his kind neighbor, crying outside her home. "My daughter is still inside," she screamed. The flames licked at the windows and black smoke poured out. Daniel did not hesitate. He wrapped a wet cloth around his mouth, pushed through the fire, and climbed the stairs. The heat was unbearable, but he heard a faint cry. In the corner of the smoky room, a little girl was curled up, coughing. Daniel lifted her into his arms and rushed back down. The fire burned his hands and smoke filled his lungs, but he pushed forward until he reached the door. Outside, the townsfolk cheered as he carried the child to her mother. Mrs. Carter wept with relief, holding her daughter tightly. But Daniel collapsed on the ground, exhausted, his arms covered with burns. The townspeople carried him back to his workshop. Some wept, thinking he might not survive. But then something incredible happened. Daniel's garden, glowing in the snow, seemed to respond to his suffering. One of the plants bent low, dropping a golden fruit directly onto the ground. Mrs. Carter picked it up, sliced it carefully, and placed a piece in Daniel's mouth. Slowly, the burns on his skin began to heal, and his breathing grew steady. Within hours, he opened his eyes. The people of Greenhill were amazed. They realized the garden was not only a blessing for sickness, but also for sacrifice. It gave back life when kindness demanded courage. From that day, Daniel was no longer just the humble carpenter. He became known as the guardian of Greenhill. People came not only for his carpentry, but for advice, comfort, and hope. Whenever someone was in need, Daniel was there, whether it was to repair a roof, feed the hungry, or share a piece of golden fruit. Yet Daniel remained humble. He still lived in his small workshop, still ate simple meals each day, and still worked with wood each day. He believed the true purpose of the garden was not to make him powerful, but to remind him, and everyone else, that kindness always returned in unexpected ways. Still, deep in his heart, Daniel sometimes wondered, why had the old man chosen him for the seeds? What greater purpose did this garden serve? The answer would come soon enough, for another trial was approaching, one that would test not only his courage, but the strength of kindness itself. Chapter 6. The Harvest of Kindness. Spring returned to Greenhill, and the snow melted away. Daniel's garden was now larger than ever. The golden plants grew tall, their blossoms shining brighter than lanterns. People said the garden could be seen glowing at night from the hills outside the town. Daniel's life was filled with visitors. Some came seeking healing, others seeking advice. He gave freely, never asking for gold. Many people wondered why he stayed poor when he could have sold just one fruit for a fortune. But Daniel always smiled and said, "Wealth fades, kindness lasts forever." One morning, a messenger arrived from the royal palace. Prince Adrian, now king after his father's passing, called for Daniel. The town gathered as Daniel prepared for the journey. He traveled with the messenger to the capital city, where the grand palace stood tall with shining towers. Inside the throne room, King Adrian greeted him warmly. "Daniel, guardian of Greenhill," the king said, "I have heard of all you have done. You saved lives, healed the sick, and even turned the heart of a greedy merchant. Yet you remain humble. The kingdom needs people like you." The king then explained the reason for the summons. A terrible sickness had spread in distant villages. The royal healers could not cure it. People were dying, and fear grew across the land. Daniel's heart ached as he listened. "Your Majesty," he said, "if the garden can help, I will share it." So Daniel returned to Greenhill with soldiers and wagons. They carefully carried baskets of golden fruit to the sick villages. Wherever the fruit was shared, the sick grew strong again. The children laughed, the old walked with energy, and hope returned to the kingdom. The news spread faster than fire. Soon people everywhere spoke of Daniel, not as a carpenter, not even just as a guardian, but as a man who changed lives with kindness. But Daniel always told the same story. "I only gave bread to an old man in need. He gave me seeds, and they grew. Everything began with a small act of kindness." Years passed, and Daniel grew older. His hair turned silver, but his hands remained strong. His workshop never closed, and his garden never stopped glowing. Children often played among the plants, laughing and chasing butterflies. Travelers from far kingdoms came to see the miracle garden, and all left with hearts lighter than any before. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Daniel sat in his garden. The golden light of the plants mixed with the orange glow of the sky. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure walking toward him, the old man from the market. The man looked just the same as years ago, tired clothes, gentle eyes, but with a presence that felt larger than life. "You have done well, Daniel," the man said. "You cared for the seeds, and more importantly, you cared for people. You proved that true wealth is not gold, but kindness." Daniel bowed his head. "But why me? Why did you choose me?" The old man smiled. "Because you gave your last bread when you had nothing. Kindness shown in hardship is the truest form of all. That is why the seeds belonged to you." And with those words, the old man slowly faded, as if he were never truly of this world. Daniel sat quietly, tears in his eyes, but peace in his heart. He finally understood. The garden was not magic alone. It was the harvest of kindness, the fruit of good deeds returning, multiplied to those who believe in giving. From that day until his final breath, Daniel remained the same humble carpenter, and Greenhill, blessed by his kindness, became a town where everyone remembered. What you give returns. Thanks for watching. Take action today, not tomorrow. Press subscribe. And let's keep learning together. You're doing great. See you in the next one. Stay strong.